Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Season 3, Episode 9 of Mindclickers, where it's time to click both heads in 2022. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. It's been an absolute pleasure to sort of organise this and jump on with the main man himself, Mr. Gregan. How you going, man?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I feel like this is the kind of podcast that was made for me to talk about all things outside of the game and talk about the people behind the game in well, for Rocket League for us, but across all of esports.
Yeah, love that,
So
man.
excited.
I really appreciate you. Obviously, it's a little bit of a time difference, but we managed to figure out a nice time that sort of works for both of us in a way, and hopefully some of the viewers that tune in soon. Fantastic. Now, usually what we do on MyClick is a little bit of what I like to call an anime intro arc. So I guess a bit of background about yourself, maybe how you got into gaming, how that led into the esports world, and any study or anything you did around that time as well.
Yeah, well, it started very young. I just remember gaming my whole life. Probably with Pokemon Blue was the first game I ever played.
Okay.
I think it was my brother's copy of Pokemon Blue, and I stole it and just got really into it. And then that was me, the Pokemon gamer, and then I became a bit of a Nintendo gamer. And it was around Minecraft, just after it had released, not when it was in that alpha and beta and stuff, but just after it had fully released. I started really getting into Minecraft, and that was probably the big game for me that turned gaming into more of a job style thing or community driven thing, because I started working with the Nox crew, which was my build team for a long time, and they're now one of the biggest build teams in Minecraft. And that was where I went to Insomnia Gaming Festival. We ran a booth, and that was the journey into the working space of gaming. And then Rocket League just came out at a very convenient time. It was a summer between my first and second year of uni, and then that was the game which I just fell in love with. And I didn't really know much about esports before that. I'd seen it, heard of it, I saw it in gaming festivals, but it was the transition from Nintendo to Minecraft to then Rocket League, which has taken me to where I am now, which is an esports sweaty gamer who loves Rocket League.
Love that. And did you ever, I guess, envision that you'd get to this point?
I think I envisioned growing up that I wouldn't necessarily have a normal job. I thought it was going to be cricket. I thought I was going to be involved in cricket in some way, whether it be playing, coaching, involved in any level of cricket, all the way up to the top level was what I dreamed of.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up as well, gaming started to become a bit of a love for me. So I thought maybe I'll get into like game development. Obviously not understanding that I didn't have the skill set for game development. I didn't really know there was going to be other jobs in gaming when I got around to the age of working. And I actually remember when I was in sixth form at school, we had one of these classic think about the future, but don't think too hard because you don't know what's going to be out there when you're finished with uni.
Yeah.
And it was one of these like stats of how many jobs in 5 years time will exist that don't exist right now. And it was like mind blowing that like 50% of the jobs or something, I don't actually remember the stat, but I remember at the time it being like around half of the jobs after uni that you could apply for don't even exist when you start uni. So don't think that hard about the end goal of uni. And then there I was coaching a game that hadn't even come out yet in an industry that had barely even got into a professional state it's in now. So yeah, that was very true for me. And I couldn't imagine what I do now, but I had always imagined that it wouldn't necessarily be traditional like teacher, doctor, lawyer, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely has surprised a lot of people how fast I guess the esports industry is growing. Like you'd look back maybe 5-6 years ago and you'd think, would this be where we are now? Probably not. Would we have, coaches, physiotherapists, dietitian, nutritionists working with gamers? Like that just doesn't really blend together. So it's crazy how fast it's grown, but it's also crazy how fast it's going to grow as well, right? And it's really interesting is it going to overtake traditional sports in that sort of outlet? It's going to be an interesting question, I reckon.
Yeah, well, you can never know how big something's going to grow, and the classic thing is the bubble going to pop and all that.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be events that are bigger than other events in sport. I think that's the realistic aim. I think to catch up to the biggest sports is an outrageous idea. But then equally, like I've been involved in sports that are going through a similar growth to esports. Like Ultimate Frisbee, I did at university, and just within this country, it's grown so much just in the 5-10 years I've been playing it. Like my school was one of the only schools that played it, and then I went to university and the university numbers are going up and up and up. The amount of tournaments are going on are going up, and then the age range of the people who play Ultimate Frisbee is now going up. And so like you start seeing over 30s playing Ultimate Frisbee, where for the longest time, you know, they were in their 20s, and it's only now that we've had 10, 15 years of Ultimate Frisbee in this country that you see those older people. And that's the same thing for esports, right? Like the age range of the people who are loving esports and gaming is only going up because you're young when you get into it, and then you stay into it into your 30s, right? So in that sense, I think we'll do better than some of the sports that are the other end of the spectrum, where they've got a lot of older generation involved in them. And as the people get older, that means they're less invested, and then that's where sports like Formula One had to completely reshift the way they looked at their sport, because for a long time they were an aging demographic supporting Formula One, and then they've managed to rekindle that with the younger generation by switching up the way they present it, you know, with more dramatized stuff, and like the races, the locations, and the personalities involved in Formula One are going more down that social media route to try and engage the younger audience. And I think that's where we're quite fortunate. So we've got quite a forward-thinking way of getting people involved, and it will only get better as generations go. But who knows what will be there in like 10, 20 years time? Will there be holographic viewing? Like, we don't know. And maybe esports will completely dominate because of that or something.
We start to go more VR. So we have guys sitting in like a booth, and it's actually a VR Rocket League setup.
Yeah, it could be. We don't know.
We don't know exactly. That's the thing. Yeah, that's crazy that you actually mentioned the Formula One setting as well, because obviously Drive to Survive, I think, was massive for that. You know, that whole exposure and that led through that. And I think that we're seeing the same thing with, I guess, upcoming esports documentaries that sort of given an insight into the world of esports, into a world of a team, what that looks like from a player's perspective, a team's perspective, an organization's perspective. And I think that really allows itself to sort of connect with wider audiences who aren't too familiar with esports as a whole. And that's just going to help with growth as well, which is, phenomenal.
Yeah, well, the big thing for esports is people understanding that there is more to it than just gaming. You know, the classic interview you see on TV is someone goes, "Oh yeah, you can win this amount of money for winning a tournament," and then the response on the interview will be, "Oh, I should have just played video games and I could have won that." And it's like, well, yeah, it's not that simple. You don't just play the game and then win. You have to do so much more than that, especially once you get to the top of a very competitive game where everyone else has just played the game for thousands of hours.
Exactly.
That's where you find those edges, and that's what those documentaries will highlight, especially as time goes on and we see more innovative approaches from each team, especially with the holistic approach and psychology and all of that stuff has already been shown to work. And now we're going through that next stage of what are the things that people are trying out that is applying science from other areas into esports without any like direct esports proof.
So
what is the next thing that we can guarantee is working, and we can show the evidence from the people who've done it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. The expenditure is just going to be fantastic, and it's going to be really good to see, and it's going to be positive for the industry as a whole. So it's going to be exciting to see. What I'll just quickly add is, and I can edit this out of the podcast. I forgot to tweet out that we're actually live, so I just tagged you in a tweet and just chucked it up. So if you want to give that maybe a bit of a retweet, try and get some more people in, that'd be cool. For sure. Now, one thing that I'm obviously really interested in, because obviously, I guess my experience as a coach originated within traditional sports. So, we're talking early days of rugby, taekwondo, and to sort of bridge the gap into esports within itself. So I used to do a bit of StarCraft, a little bit of CS in the early days, and then transitioned into Rocket League. How did your, I guess, initial coaching sort of career sort of facilitate and come to fruition?
Yeah, I started out as a commentator more so than a coach, but I did have a background in coaching, so that's why it seemed logical. Similar to you, it was in sport. You know, I coached cricket, coached ultimate frisbee. I mean, even I was an African drumming teacher at school, so like I'd had a lot of experience of like teaching things to people. And then when it came to Rocket League, I remember my first YouTube videos that I made on it when I was like, I wasn't that good a player, but I started off with, this is how you do well in ones or twos or threes, right? Like I always wanted to teach, and all of my friends, I was teaching them. And when I was a commentator, I was a very highly analytical commentator, despite having no background in competing or coaching or anything like that. And then around, I can't remember which Insomnia it was, but I just started chatting with Doomsy at Insomnia, and I'd coached a few smaller teams at this point. And Doomsy and I were just chatting. He was like, "Do you know what? I could really do with what you're doing right now with me and talking about Rocket League. I need someone just to explain stuff to me."
Yeah.
Because at that time, no one really thought much about Rocket League. And so having those chats with him, I sort of came into Supersonic Avengers as Doomsy's coach, and then coached the team a little bit. And then that's around the time where Tabletop Tactics first happened, which is I would like to say is probably the first rotation video in Rocket League, first teaching of a concept that wasn't mechanics. Because all the tutorials that were out there were like, how do you do a half flip? How do you do a double tap? How do you do an aerial? And then I came in and was like, how do you go back post? What's the different positions on the pitch? And I started explaining that. And that came from an Insomnia where I was trying to explain back post rotations to a few people, and I just had bottle tops on the table and was just showing them using that stuff. And they're like, you should put this on YouTube. So that's where that all came from. So I'd say that whole journey of being a coach beforehand and then starting to sort of coach on a friendly basis in Rocket League, and then making it more official with Supersonic Avengers. For the most part, I thought I was going to be a commentator, but then being a European commentator in the pre-COVID era was quite hard because of the visa potential issues. Being an American company, Shogun was our one and only for the longest time. And it was getting to a stage where I was like, I can't keep waiting. I need something to happen. And then Vitality reached out and like, hey, we need a team. I say Vitality reached out. I met them through Clash Royale. I was like, hey, if you need a team in Rocket League, I'll help find you a team. And so I did the whole scouting process for them, did a lot of chatting with them, got him in contact with a few other people for help with their Rocket League journey. And they basically just went, hey, do you want to come and manage this team because we like the way you work? And I was like, yeah, sure. At this point, if it pays me well enough and it's a good experience, I'll do it. And then that's where I took the jump. And it was around that time where Sonics were like, hey, we're thinking about getting you on board for commentary. And I was like, oh, why didn't you say this like 2 months ago? I'm committed now. But I'm glad I did, because the journey through managing, coaching, and then going more towards the coaching side at Guild after the experience of being a manager coach at Vitality, I think that was probably the most important experience for me in my career. So that's where I got into coaching and why I got into coaching. And it wasn't like I'm going to be a coach decision. It sort of just happened through that journey.
Yeah, wow, I really like that backstory. It's really interesting finding how I guess many coaches and players originate into the scene, and it's always really refreshing to hear that people have different ways to do it. And obviously, by choosing the coaching route over the commentating route, obviously amazing things have come to fruition. And it's it's sort of interesting if you sort of reflect back and think, well, what if I didn't go the coaching route? Would I be in the same position I'm in? Would I not? And so many different things can come from it. So I think it's awesome to have that perspective.
Yeah, the journey into coaching for a lot of people, especially in Rocket League, is through friends, right? Oh, my friend can help coach, or I know this person who's coached me a little bit on the side. And I think there's a few examples. I think you're probably one of them based off of what I know of your background. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where you've come in from a professional side, where you've gone to the org first, and then the org has gone, right, you're working with this team. And like for me, like I didn't really have a connection with Fairy Peak, Pashi, or Freaky when I started coaching and managing them. It was very much like a mutual, you're in the scene, I'm in the scene. And I think it is a healthier way to start things off, because with the whole friend thing, that's where you get in potential issues down the line. And I think that will happen more and more as time goes on, as people are more professional in the scene, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of area to look at it, because obviously there's, I guess, a few different roles that a coach can have, right? You can have the coach who is a lot more clock in, clock out, right? Whether it be not really a traditional 9 to 5, but okay, scrims are now, scrims are done, see you guys in the next scrim session. Or you could have the coach who's a lot more, I guess, involved, where it's like half an hour before actually mingling, maybe playing a little bit of a couple of other games with the guys, then doing scrims, and then having a bit of a debrief period afterwards. And I guess there's, is there a right or wrong there? Is there a more direction that's better to go, do you think?
Yeah, I think with every game it's going to vary a lot, and I think the big thing I learned with Rocket League was less is sometimes more. You want to try and make things as easy as possible. And make people feel as comfortable as possible. And I think one of the big issues I always caught myself doing in hindsight was I just overcoached. I tried to do too much. I tried to force them to do something. I
Mm,
spoke for the full minute between the game there. I
right.
didn't hit ready up because I was speaking the whole time. You know, like all those kind of moments.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's sometimes it's better to break things down into different sections, like I said, like a debrief style. You know, having more just general chatter,
Mm,
being a mate in the group chat kind of stuff,
yeah.
rather than the here's my little intense period of coaching where we're just going to go ham. And then I think a lot of people don't have that processing power to take in all that information
For sure.
and actually apply it directly with what they're doing at the time, because a lot of these guys play instinctually, right? Like
Yeah.
you're trying to give them uh unconscious competence through conscious competent teaching. So when you
Gotcha.
go through that conscious competent teaching stage, they're going to be a little bit slower. They're going to have to make a few more mistakes and all that kind of thing. And if you do that too much, I think that really throws people off a lot. So I think that's where the styles that we've spoken about, the reason why the hype man style is often quite a good one and has had a lot of success in the past is because they're
Mm,
often doing less. And I think Sathu responded to me saying this in a Reddit post the other day.
yeah.
And I think obviously they've had great success, and I think he's definitely a big part of that. But it's about doing the most important bits and not oversaturating it with all the less important bits.
Mm,
So whatever style of coaching you have, make sure to not overwhelm, because that's when you start to make that really important one message that you say in a session gets lost in the mix of all the other gibberish that
yeah.
you've chucked at them over and over again.
Gets lost in translation for sure.
Uh-huh.
And I think just to go off the back of that as well, you know, of course the coaching element is important, but obviously the players, you know, each individual is different, right? Whether they take coaching on the head or whether they sort of acknowledge it in a different way, right? You know, I've definitely had in the past whereby, for example, in StarCraft, when I was coaching an individual who didn't really like the coaching element and aspect, it was more so a sort of a check-in, you know, how have you been performing? Do you need any help with your in-game macro, micro, anything like that? No, okay, all good, no worries. And then I had someone else who was a lot more involved. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to talk about sleep. He wanted to talk about exercise. He was more so reaching to sort of step outside his element. And I think that's where it's really interesting, because we can sort of go off the back of facilitating a team environment and a team culture, if you will. And I think we see it even at LAN, you know, when a team's, whether they get a lot more hyped when they celebrate or when they're a lot more reserved, you know, how they hold themselves, how they walk, and all these sort of differences within a team that really facilitate that positive team culture. And I think it's very unique. But do you think that you
Yeah.
could copy that? Because I think that a lot of teams look at another team performing really well and they say, hey, that team's doing really well. I want to copy what they do. But it's not really coming from the core, right?
Yeah, that's the tough question, is where is that copying coming from?
Mm,
Is it seeking the perfect way to do things and then therefore try and do their way? Or is it you genuinely believe that their way is a good way and you sort of like seen them do it and you're going, oh, that's a good way to do it, I'm going to do it. I've always had a big belief, especially with the holistic stuff around health, fitness, diet, nutrition, sleep, is the greatest factor as to whether it works or not is if they want to do it.
yep.
And so the benefits of doing a certain method are far outweighed by the idea of it being a good method or not. Because if you wake up every day and you think, do you know what, if I eat this certain set of food, I'm going to play better, and you believe that,
Mm-hmm.
then even just the psychological effect of believing that is more powerful than the food itself.
For
Even
sure.
though we know that the food will probably help you because it's got X, Y, and Z that give you more energy and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But then if they wake up and they eat that food and they're like, oh, coach is making me eat this food, you know, we have to eat this every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't really like the taste of it. They're going to come in and then they're going to be less effective despite having that better energy source because of the fact they don't believe in it. And that's where what you just said, I think, really matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you just watched a team have fun at an event and you go and look at these guys having fun, they're playing so much better. And then you go into a match and you put on that fake smile, you're like, let's go, guys, we can do this.
Yeah.
And like that's not always going to work because it's not coming from a place of genuine, let's go out there and have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that would probably be my way of reflecting on that. And I think that's where some teams do get inspired by others and just go, yeah, let's just go full win mindset like Queso do, or let's just
Mm-hmm.
go out there and have a laugh, let's make some jokes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I guess throughout your, coaching with Vitality, was there periods where there was such a reduced motivation, maybe because there was a hard loss or something happened that was sort of bringing down the team? And I guess, what was your way of dealing with that?
Yeah, there's definitely ups and downs, especially post-winning Worlds, like classic. What's the name of it? There's the like fall off that you get after winning a big event.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
And I remember it being quite hard to motivate them. And the thing was, they were such good Rocket League players that people might not have even noticed it. So we went off to Valencia, and I think we went 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 3-0 through the first 2 days.
Yeah.
And then on the final day, we hit NRG and they got slapped. And it was kind of like they just ran out of steam. And I just remember not. I looked at them all. And I was like, "You don't have energy. Like, there is nothing I can do right now to get you guys up and going."
Yeah.
And like all the things I'd been doing at Worlds that were working, it was like when you're trying to do like a dad joke in a family party.
Yeah.
And like
no reaction.
and they were the kid in the corner who's like cringing, like, "Oh, go away, like I don't want to be in this environment anymore."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, but you were laughing at these 2 weeks ago." And it was just like, there's nothing you can do at that point. People get tired, people get burnt out, and that's where you go, right, how can we go away, rest, and come back stronger? And I think big thing I learned at Guild around rest was how much days off meant to them. Like hearing, okay, you guys have put in a lot of work, I'm going to give you 2 extra days off because we haven't got a tournament for a little while, and they'll be like, "Oh yes, I can plan something out, I can go do this, I can go do that, and spend time with my girlfriend or whatever it is that they want to do." And that means a lot. And the same thing was true when we spoke to a few athletes, because we had some athletes come talk to us, and they said the same thing. When coach is like, "Oh yeah, you get a day off now because you've worked so hard," not only does it excite them that they've got a day off, but it makes them reflect and go, "Do you know what? We've actually smashed it." And so it almost like reaffirms the hard work that's gone on. So I think that's the best way to reset when you have those off days. And like you said, you just have to know your players. You have to know what they need. And I think a lot of the time it comes from what can you actually provide, and what are their expectations of what you should be providing. And so one big example of that for us was we went to DreamHack Dallas, which was 2 weeks before Worlds, and the players just didn't feel fully supported by Vitality. And I just had this massive document that I sent off to Vitality and said, "We need everything on this document before Worlds, otherwise we won't win." I was like, "You have to do all these things, because otherwise we're just going to turn up to Worlds. We're not going to feel like we want to win for Vitality. We're not going to feel like this." And amongst that list was giving our players every one of the items in the Vitality store that was coming out in a few weeks. I was like, "You have to send it to us early, because if you send it to us early, not only does that show you guys care about us, but they're going to be wearing sick merch the whole time, and they're going to be rocking around in their new clothes. They're going to feel sick about it." And then there was a few other things, like on the boot camp, making sure that we have a day where we just went to New York and just enjoyed it. Making sure that throughout the whole boot camp that food was provided, making sure that like we got a few good luck messages sent through to the players from the Vitality staff. Like all of these things, it was just like these little 1%ers of just making them feel more comfortable with just like little short-term gifting of energy. And I think that's something you can do as well, is you can definitely take that step back and go, "Right guys, let's just have an evening where we just play another game and just chill out for a bit." And that's the way to reset you to come in the next day and go, "Right, let's smash scrims,"
100% agree with that. I love that. I love the fact of sort of basing a player's mood and how they're going to react based off an action is going to lead to ultimate and better action as well. We see it a lot in motivational counseling and motivational interviewing, whereby when someone's not really feeling within the mood themselves that they want to be in, you sort of try and indirectly evoke that underlying motivation towards whatever they want to do. And it's sort of this indirect process whereby it's sort of a bounce back. It's sort of a you're not forcing it, but they're not trying to take control. It's more of a guiding process. And if you're able to guide the player, and very much what I do with the guys as well, indirectly, you're able to see results that you might not have thought could happen, but all of a sudden they are happening. You're getting the responses that are a little bit more positive. You're seeing a different attitude shift as well. And they're all the small, as you said, and I love that, the 1%ers that you take, and you take them as wins. And you can use them to reflect back on, in the future, if there are negative times, if there are situations and circumstances whereby, we had a big loss, we can easily and effectively reflect back to those 1%ers and when they worked, and can we take from them, can we use them, can we utilize them now, is something we can do differently, and it's all about just positioning the players and positioning the guys, I guess, in the most comfortable position, as you said as well. So completely agree. I love that.
Yeah, and you also learn a lot about yourself as you get older, and I think with a lot of the esports players, they're so young and they're not in tune with what they actually want and need as a person. And I think a great example of that was at the Worlds that we won. Just before the day we went and had the big performance, we were the final quarterfinal, and they said our call time was 10 a.m. You have to be in the lobby at 10 a.m. But we weren't playing until like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And K-Dup was like, I want an extra hour of sleep. I'm not getting up and going over at that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I spent a good 15, 20 minutes arguing with Sanix, like, I will walk them over an hour later. You do not need to worry about them. My job is to look after these guys, put them in my hands.
Love
and they're
that.
like, no, we have to walk them over at this time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is not happening. And the same thing happened at Madrid. I did the exact same thing with the health and safety guy who was there. He was like, no, everyone has to get the coach in the morning together. I'm like, no. We're not playing for another 5 hours.
5 hours.
I'm not going to, I'm not getting my players over there to sit in your space for 5 hours because they won't play as well.
Mm-hmm.
And all those kind of things. It's like the fights that I've always had to do as manager, I would say are way more valuable than anything I could have ever said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like making sure there's the right food, the right water. You know, player comes up to me, they're like, hey, can I get a coffee? And they're like, I don't like the coffee that these guys have got. You go, okay, well, we'll get you a different coffee. And as much as they might become divas and start asking for really stupid things, that's where you've got to know your limits and be like, right, I'm not going to get you some like crazy coffee from 4 hours away, but like if you don't like what they're providing you here, we'll order you food in if that's what it takes. And I think that's the hard point of where if you say no to everything like a parent would, you start to build that friction. You have to be choosing the right battles to fight off and be like, sorry, we just can't do that, you know, this is just not feasible. And then those other times where you'd be like, yes, I will make that happen for you.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a few different circumstances that I can reflect on during the brief period of, I guess, Sweden and LA where that sort of happened, whereby someone's asked for something in particular. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we'll just leave it at there. But yeah, no, it is really good to sort of have that outlet and sort of you know, indirectly fight for your players. And I think they appreciate that, right? I think the most important thing is that they know that they have someone who's not just their coach or not just their manager, but someone who genuinely cares for them, someone who genuinely cares for their performance come game day. And they're like, oh, he's really making sure that I put in the work. You know, we've been putting in X amount of hours every night back home, and this is the time to do it. You know, we're international, and now we've got to turn on, and he's really making me sure that I can, you know, facilitate that and facilitate the best environment. So I think that important aspect is just, it's crucial. There are different coaches, and I had a chat with, I think it was Kaplan, who's the head of Ghost Gaming. He's a Valorant coach. We had a chat about different style of coaching, whether it be, you know, more so authoritarian or democratic, whereby it's very much, you know, you have to do this, and this, or else you don't get anything. Or it's, okay, you do whatever you want to do, and I'll just sit on the side and sort of watch you and sort of take notes and sort of see how you blend together. Now, I think there's a few different, you know, positive and negatives you can take from styles of coaching. Do you think that you had a particular style that was more so, you know, either democratic or authoritarian, or, you know, any of those sort of different terms?
Yeah, I mean, you do mix it up over time. And I think one of the big things I tried to do was test out different styles without telling the players. You know, I would come into a scrim and consciously go, this is how I'm going to act in this scrim, and see how you guys react. Awesome. And I seem to remember the jokey environment tended to be the best one, whereas a little bit more vibesy and just having fun with it, which is where, you know, the classic have fun meta comes from, you know. But then I think there was quite a lot of the authoritarian stuff of like, you need to put these many hours in, otherwise you're just not going to win. And I think the problem you've got with that style is if they lose the motivation or they don't hit the targets that you're setting them, they then failed. And so that's where you've got to like try and frame it in a way of making it good for them and making them improve. And there's only so much you can do with like tracking before it starts to become a negative thing, especially in young players who are missing good sleep. You know, you say to them like, "Oh, how's your sleep last night?" I remember there was a period of time where we were trying to fix our sleep as a team. Like, how did you sleep last night? And they're like, "Yeah, I was all right. Went to bed at like 4 or 5 a.m." And you're like, "What? That's later than last time. You said you're gonna go to bed earlier." And like, I just couldn't sleep. And then you're like, "Okay, well, we started off today with a failure, and that's always quite tricky."
Yeah.
So I started to try and ignore that kind of stuff, but I think it's about choosing the right battles at the right times.
Yep.
With the authoritarian approach, which I definitely think is we've all grown up with it. You know, teachers, parents, like it's such a natural way to develop as individuals.
Yeah.
And I think it always has to be during that development time if you're going to go for that approach. I'd say around the practice time, it would be authoritarian. Like, okay, we've got a tournament in 4 weeks' time. In particular, the regional we won at Guild, that had a long build up beforehand of like 2 months of, right, let's improve. And then there was a moment where like, right, we've done the work, let's go out now and just enjoy it. Like everything we've done up to this point is going to allow us to go out there and just perform without having to worry. And then when we're performing, you know, I'm the cheerleader style of like, just let's go guys, you know, I'm not here to coach you right now. There's nothing I can say right now that's going to change the way you play. We did all that work 2 months ago. You know, you've done the grind, you've done the hard work, you've got the hard graft out the way. Now we just go out there and enjoy it. And then that's where the psychological benefit of a non-authoritarian approach comes in. So I think, yeah, a whole mixture of styles. And I think the key is to test them out and also ask what do people want and what do people need, because it's very easy to assume what people want. But I've asked players, I'm like, do you want me to push you? Do you want me to tell you to go and do more hours? Do you feel like that makes you go and do it? And then if they say yes, you're like, okay, well, I know what my job is now. You've literally told me, make sure I'm doing this. So now you can't complain if I come and tell you why have you not put your hours in, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. So many things you can take from that. And I completely agree with everything. There's just so many ways that you can sort of test the waters with, you know, different coaching styles and whether it works or whether it doesn't. Hey, at least we tried it, right? And I think trying it is the most important thing, because you don't know until you do try it. There are, you know, multiple different sort of reflections that I can make, you know, especially with my guys, whereby I've tried something and it hasn't really worked, and I've noticed that. I've noticed there has been a bit of an attitude shift, and I've thought, okay, maybe that's not the best way to approach it. And then I've thought, you know, well, maybe why is that? Is it because, you know, we're leading up to a regional? Is it because we're going international soon and we don't want to be changing too many things? Or is it more so because I should have picked up on something? And I think there are multiple different angles you can take from that. But I think the most important thing is not to overthink it, like you said. And I guess that's where, you know, and I think it's a vivid, right? It's a vivid thing, right? This whole idea of a have fun meta. You know, I think, you know, after talking with Jojo on Mindclickers, and then sort of going and seeing him perform in LA, it's definitely a crazy thing, because I remember him saying, you know, I don't care what the crowd is, what they're saying, all I want to do is go and have fun. I don't care. And then for him to actually go and do that and to sort of ignore the crowd potentially and still have fun and do what he wants to do, I think that's a crazy thing, right? And I think that's a phenomenal thing to be able to do. So do you think that we're going to see a more of a have fun meta for a lot of teams, or some teams are just going to stick to their roots and sort of just shrug through?
Well, I think the big challenge with the have fun meta is where's that having fun coming from?
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of teams really struggle. Like Queso, that was their first land, so they're going to have fun anyway. And so it's very easy to ride that wave of, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. Whatever happens, we've won. We're literally in LA playing a video game. We can't lose here. By the third LAN, you're then like, where does that motivation come from to have fun? Is it because you enjoy winning lots of money? And then, okay, well, now what happens if you concede a goal? Is that going to affect you the other way? And that's where you see these teams that have fun for their first events, or they have fun at the right time of the year. And like for us with Vitality, we had fun because we created that environment for the team. You know, I said about like wearing merch, you know, like literally walking out on stage in your Vitality stuff. You know, the crowd was was amazing as an opportunity. It was Scrub's first Worlds. You know, he's loving it because it's his first Worlds.
Yeah.
You know, Caleb and Fairy Peak reunited. You know, we're all just really excited to be there.
Yeah.
And so therefore we had fun with it. And then you go to a future event, like I said, Valencia, where they've just won Worlds. They're then like, oh, do we have to be here? I just want to be at home and relaxing. And so, yeah, that's the classic shift. You know, it comes across all competitive spaces or art spaces, is when it's a hobby that you love and you're able to have fun off the back of it by doing something amazing in the space, whether it be a big LAN or winning a tournament, whatever it is. You then go, how are you going to act in 6 months' time when this has been your job? And especially once you start getting income through big salaries, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I was the age of some of these pros earning what they're earning through a salary, and they think, well, for the next 6 months, I'm guaranteed this amount of money anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I win or lose. They might start getting lazy and not putting in the work. And because the idea of getting another 3-4 grand for a tournament doesn't really land with them, because they're already getting over 3 to 4 grand just for playing the game, you know? And that's where I've always found the psyche of the minor regions, like your OCs and your SAMs, and even like sub-Saharan Africa. I've spoken a lot with those guys. Like, they play because they want to play and they love the game, not because they're getting a massive paycheck each month. And I feel like that's where you tend to see their step up potential in that environment. And that's what happened in Sweden, wasn't it? Of like the teams that were expected to do well with all the veterans, they were quite tense because it was like, we have to do well. Whereas everyone else was just like, I can't believe we're here. This is great. Let's just go out and have some fun.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps with that relaxed mindset. So it's hard to, what Joy has said with him having fun there, and that's his mindset and how he's going to perform well. I do wonder how easy that will be next time.
Yeah. Find out soon. Dun dun dun. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what facilitates around them and what goes on with those guys, and I guess where they go as well. Obviously, I'm not too in depth with it, but it's going to be crazy. You know, there's been a lot of changes that have happened over, you know, the last few weeks, so it's going to be really interesting to see, and also how those changes maybe impact a player's mental as well, because that's also a factor as well. Whether it be a massive change, well, you know, is there a lot more pressure for that, you know, person to perform now, or is it more so, you know, I've already secured the salary, don't worry about it, let's just cruise through it, sort of thing. So it's very good. It's sort of interesting to mix it, and I think you can sort of look at it with other esports as well. You know, obviously League of Legends being a very tournament dominated sort of prize pool game, whereby there is that massive incentive to actually get out there and perform because of the crazy prize pools. Yeah, but I guess at the end of the day, there are different individual factors that do drive someone to perform and do drive someone to try their best, right?
Yeah, well, it is that journey from passionate hobby, and then suddenly you're like, right, this is my job, and that's often where it dips. And then you go through that reforming stage.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for teams, it's the case for individuals. Yeah, I got it explained to me through the COO at Guild. Completely changed the way I look at the journey arc of a team, of a individual, the whole like forming, storming, norming, performing, where you start off at a higher level than you'd expect, because you haven't had a chance for the negatives to come through. You haven't had a chance to experience fatigue as a team or as a player. You literally just love playing for way more hours than you probably should. You're overtraining. You're spending every working moment with your team because you love your team and they're all so amazing. You just want to hang out with them all the time. And then something goes wrong, whether it be the team underperforms, whether it be someone starts turning up late for scrims a lot, or maybe it's just, you know, burnout or whatever it is. And then that's where the team starts to drop. And then that's where you go through the storming phase. And then the hardest bit, that's the easy bit. Everyone gets the honeymoon phase, right? And then they go into that drop. It's how you get back to the same level you're at in the honeymoon phase, and actually feel like you're progressing. Because the challenge is, you go, oh, we're only back at the same level we were back then, right? And then it's how do you get from that to then going all the way to the stars, which is the real hard shift. And that's where you get players like your Garrett G's who have gone through that journey and managed to get themselves clear of the storming phase, but then they'll have their own little mini storming phases like they've had recently, right? At the LA, like that's like a mini storm because they're getting the burnout of being a pro player for that long.
Yeah.
And it's those who can pick themselves back up and go to the next event and manage to have fun again. And for some people, what they need is a roster move, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps you need to do what G2 did and have that. I'm so motivated again because the environment we're in is completely different. We've got a whole new dynamic. We've got new player, new way of playing, new motivations, and that's sometimes what you need. But then you can't always rely on switching a roster up, switching up a way of playing or whatever it is. You sometimes do just have to dig deep within and try something else. And I think for a lot of people, they can look outside of the game and find something that makes them happy outside the game, like fitness, like getting into more social activities or picking up a new hobby. Try and avoid gaming is always what I try and think, because otherwise that could have a direct negative effect. Like you don't want to pick up a really addictive game and then that means you can't practice. But like finding something that keeps you going forward, keeps you winning. Make sure that every single day when you get out of bed, you have a win that day, and it's not reliant on the performance of your scrim or the performance of that most recent tournament to make you feel successful for the day. And so, that's where I think the younger players often come in. They're obsessed with Rocket League. They put in hundreds of hours in 2 weeks, and they think, right, this is it. This is all I've got to do for the rest of my Rocket League career, and then I'll stay at the top. But then when they don't want to do that anymore, what do they do with that time that they've got around playing? And for a lot of them, it will turn quite unhealthy, and they'll start playing other games, or the classic like FIFA or ARC players. I won't call out any individuals, but you know what I mean, right?
I've got a few that I know as well. Don't worry about it. It is crazy, and it is one thing. I've seen it in other games as well. I've seen it within Rocket League as well, whereby someone completely, people completely start to fixate their whole wake and sleep schedule around playing Rocket League. And it's about, I guess, having that importance of having something else to do, even if it's doing a bit of uni or doing a course or something that sort of separates you from that area whereby you are scrimming now, you're with your team, you're in that focused environment. And it's the same thing as professional traditional sports athletes do as well, right? I used to work in a rugby team, and a lot of those guys have other things outside of training, whether it be their own business, whether it be different hobbies and different skills that they've equipped themselves with. Sort of facilitating an environment outside of your own professional environment can seem daunting, right? But I think the positives that draw from it are phenomenal. But it's just about helping the players or helping the individual to realize that, because that within itself, I think, is the trickiest thing, whereby someone's been in an esport or someone's been in a game for the last 3 or 4 years. They've sort of embedded within their mind, hey, I've got to this spot, I've got to this position because of what I've been doing. So why would I change things? And it's helping them to look towards to do something different, whereby that can actually have a positive impact and it can make you better.
Yeah, I think the most obvious one that we've seen work with several players in esports has always been the gym as your hobby.
Yeah.
Just because, or a sport even. It doesn't have to necessarily be the gym. I guess just sports can be quite hard timing wise because it's often clashing with practice and stuff. But the whole idea of doing something where you're constantly progressing, and then you've even got the physical effects and the benefits of that. I think it's such an obvious link with being a pro gamer, being able to go, right, in the morning before I have to work, I'm going to get up and go to the gym, and it's something to get up for each day. And the way I always just used to see it, especially when I was coaching, because coaching, you get the same effect of the day-to-day fluctuation. You have a bad scrim day, it feels awful. You go away from it, you're like, God, what, all that work I put in and it's all gone backwards and so on. And like, if I can then just look and reflect on the day and go, well, at least I went to the gym today, and at least I picked up that weight, or at least I, worked really hard there, PB'd here, or, you look in the mirror and you're like, okay, I'm going forward in something in my life, And that's the hard thing. If everything revolves around Rocket League performance in your mentality, you have 2 or 3 bad scrim days, and then boom, you're struggling to sleep. You're feeling depressed. You're feeling uncomfortable each day. You don't want to get up and practice. You fall out of love with Rocket League as well, and then that's when you stop putting the hours in, and then it's a spiral that self-fulfilling, and you don't get better. and you get easily tilted. I think that's the classic one, isn't it? When you have a period of negative performance in Rocket League,
Yep.
you then have this much quicker frustration over, oh, I lost or I conceded a goal. This is just that typical me. Like at the moment, I keep losing, and actually, that's just a mentality thing, right? You could also go the other way, where if you win a lot, you could take 4 or 5 losses in a row and you don't even realize you've lost. You look at your rank like, God, I went down in MMR. I thought I was doing great.
Yeah.
You know, and literally it's just that mindset shift, and having an activity outside of it. For a lot of players, it will be having a girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
But that can be quite risky, you know, because that can go horrifically wrong.
True. It
I mean,
could.
but then that's where, like, what is a girlfriend or a boyfriend providing in someone's life? It's a very close friendship, and so then that's probably the biggest factor, that they need someone who they can reach out to. So that's where actually sometimes having a very close friendship is what they're missing, and having a social life, you know, having a friend that they can pop out to and go for a walk, or you know, I'm not saying alcohol's good, but going out for a drink if they're old enough, like there's negative effects of that, but maybe that's what they need sometimes, just to go out and have a night out, or go out for some dinner, and so that's where that, what are they actually achieving by having a partner, when we say that's a positive effect, and a lot of the time it's having a close friend is probably the most important factor.
Yeah, someone just to even reach out to. Like, you know, we see it a lot nowadays, especially around the topic of, you know, sort of reinforcing positive mental health, whereby if you have a mate to reach out to and talk about something that might have went wrong, or, you know, if a day's got you feeling down, and you're by yourself, and it's sort of just you and your own thoughts, and maybe, you know, I guess from an esports example, your teammates might not be the best people to reach out for that. It might be a bit awkward. Your coach might not be that person to reach out to, because they may start to overthink it. And it's sort of, who do I reach out to? Who do I ask? Who do I tell? And I think that's a really good example of where, by having a partner or having someone else that's sort of understanding and understands what that feels like, is crucial, because it allows not for an escape, but just for a sort of an add-on, an augment, if you will, whereby you're able to just sort of detach for a little bit, work through the motion, sort of discuss it, and then sort of jump back on and say, hey, you know, I'm upgraded. Let's get me back in. So I really like that. I really love that. It's I think it's important. I think it's a big one that a lot of players, especially esports players, overlook, for sure.
Yeah, well, it's a big part of the holistic mindset, right? The seeing the full picture, not just the practice and everything. And that's where you look at, especially now we're starting to come back to events, and you start thinking, is it better that we put our players in separate rooms, and then if they have a partner, their partner comes along to the event as well? Will that be a healthy environment for them to go back and have that relaxation space, away from their team, away from the game? And then same thing with parents, right? Like whenever we had Scrub on the team, his dad was always there because he was too young, you know?
Yep.
And his dad played a massive role in the team's success, because he was there for Scrub to offload a lot of what he was thinking during the day. And like, it sounds silly, but even just having someone be like, oh, make sure you go to bed, make sure you get up, and like having someone provide for you, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's only so much you can do as a coach in terms of getting what a person needs, you know, like making sure they've got a bottle of water, you know, that's like a really simple thing you can do, that's guaranteed improvement just by having a bottle of water brought for them. And it's like, well, sometimes you can't be there to do that, and that's where having a partner or a parent be with a player, they're going to be so much more in tune with what their wants and needs are, because they see it more often. And that's where they'd be like, hey, do you want me to get, you know, your favorite flapjack that you love, and I'll go buy that for you, and then I'll bring it over for your practice later.
Yeah.
And like, oh, you want to eat healthier now? Okay, I can cook for you in the evening when you're scrimming, and then have it ready for you after you're finished, you know?
Yeah.
Or like we said about like the socializing. Okay, should we do something tonight? Let's watch a movie tonight. Let's do this or do that.
Yeah.
And like having someone to think on your behalf and provide that holistic improvement around the lifestyle, and making sure that you have a more complete day as a human being, not just a Rocket League player. It's a lot easier when there's someone else doing that thinking for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, I don't want to, but I'm going to have to agree. Do you think that, say, for example, a player goes to LAN with their Guardian for the first time, And then obviously they turn 18 and then their guardian doesn't go. Obviously the first time they had their guardian there, they had that social outlet to talk with them with, to sort of work through it. But then next time they don't have that. Do you think that would have a detriment towards how they feel, if they would feel comfortable with the team? Because all of a sudden you're taking that away from them.
I think it would change things, and I think no matter what, change is always something you have to prepare for.
Mm.
I look back on Guild pre the current format, so from RLCS into 21-22, and I look at all the different factors that changed, whether it be players moving, players' relationships, players' motivation for the game, players' hours, players, what's their interest in the game now, what's their connection with me like, what's the connection with the org like, what's the performance psychologist connection with the player like. All of these factors were changes, and knowing which ones were the ones that led to our underperformance and which ones were the reason we did well is hard to know. And so actually in that situation, maybe they'll play better without their guardian there, especially once they're getting older and they're turning 18. But I think it's important that you're aware of it, and that the player is sort of aware of it. You don't want to overwhelm people and be like, by the way, this time your guardian's not here, so make sure you fill those gaps that they were there doing, and make sure you socialize, all that kind of stuff, because then you're min-maxing every part of their life, and you can't do that as a coach, because otherwise it makes everyone overthink everything. So I think it's just something to be watching and understanding. And if at the end of the day you go to your first tournament without their guardian there, and you notice they're struggling, and you notice they're not doing as well, that's something you've now got to work out for the future. You can't go into every tournament and expect everything to go super well. You do have to fail a bit to then be able to go forward. And that's, using the example earlier about us getting all the merch, like going out to Dallas and not having any cool merch and literally just having our jersey and some trackies that they bought, and them going, this feels horrible, I'm representing a massive org like Vitality, I don't have any merch, to then go away and go, right, we need merch. If they hadn't ever said that, I don't think we would have ever pushed to get the merch as much. And it's the same thing in every single tournament that goes badly. You come off the back of it and you reflect on all of those factors. And I think that's the only way you can deal with that. The moment you try and fix problems before they're problems is where you start to create more problems, because it might not have even been a problem in the first place. They might have been fine.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. We're getting really, I feel like we're taking it to the next level in terms of depthness, and I think this is fantastic, because I think they're all really valid reasons and thoughts for a professional player to have, right? And I mean, I guess even because I know that on Mindclickers there are a lot of younger guys who aren't quite a professional player yet, but aspire to be that level. So even just that sort of working through the process of thinking about things that they might not have even thought about, I think it's fantastic. So I really appreciate you touched on that. I think that's really good. Awesome.
Yeah, well, every person will have several things that they've not thought they need to think about.
Yep.
And until you experience it, you can't know for sure. It's we had the Dunning-Kruger effect of like.
No, I haven't. Run me through it.
So it's a phenomenon where people who are average think they're above average because they don't know what they don't know.
Okay.
So people who are very good and have seen all the things that they're not doing and seen what the best of the best do are much more likely to be dissatisfied with their own performance and think they're not as good as they are, because they're so aware of all the things that they could be doing. And then those who are, like, for example, if we just went and spoke to an average champ 2 and said, oh, how easy do you think it would be to be a pro? They're going to think it's a lot easier than it actually is, because they're not aware of all the factors of the things you have to do, the time you have to put in, and so on. And so that's where what we just described there of an issue that we don't even know is an issue yet. You cannot have the foresight to catch those issues every time. I mean, by the end of my career at Vitality, my bag had about 15 different items in it that I didn't have in the first tournament I went to.
Yeah.
Like I used to carry tissues around with me because one time K-Dub asked, can I have a tissue? And I went, I don't have one. So then I was like, well, for the rest of time, I'm always going to have tissues on me.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm thirsty. Have you got any water? I'd always have a spare bottle of water, Like all of these things where you're like, right, this question got asked. I didn't have a solution for it. Now I know I need a solution. And you can't pack that first bag for your first event and have all of these box of tricks in it without you over preparing and getting into a state of overthinking and worrying, and even then you'll probably miss something still. So yeah, that's sort of the Dunning-Kruger. It's not quite the same application of it, but it is that
Mm-hmm.
idea of you don't know what you don't know, so therefore you can't always prepare for those scenarios of things that you don't even know exist yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It makes sense. I think I've heard of something similar to that, but yeah, the same concept does apply, right? I think it's a really good way to look at it because there are things that you just can't prepare for. As much as you want to prepare for them, they're going to happen, and you know you got to sort of accept it in the moment. I've definitely had a few times that's happened, and it's like, okay, that's happened, but then you potentially do that again. You think, oh, you know, hang on, that happened last time. Is that going to happen again? Yeah, okay. Well, let's just prepare for it. So I think it's definitely an awesome one. And when you were talking about that briefly, I thought of a quote that I used to use a while ago back, and it's this really nice quote. And it's, you know, I like the sun, but things don't grow because of the sun. You have to have some rain, and you got to stop looking at rain in your life as something bad. This whole idea of we're fixated on progress and development and getting better. But, you know, there are times, and everyone does it, we reach a plateau, we reach a peak that we can't quite attain again. And then we sort of think, well, how do we get back there? But it's actually in that moment where you're sort of questioning that, where you can find that growth. So I think that's a really important sort of mindset to have. And not everyone will have that. But it's about sort of working your way through it, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges as a coach that a lot of people think they need to do, and it kind of comes in with parenting as well. It's a very similar set of scenarios that you'd do this, is you try and tell people things that they don't know so that
Yeah.
they don't make that mistake. You know, the classic example as a parent would be don't touch the hot stove,
Yeah.
right? And if you say to someone, don't touch the hot stove, and they never touch the hot stove, they're always going to want to know what happens if they touch the hot stove because you've told them it,
Yeah.
they've not experienced it yet. And so you've almost got to like create a safe environment where they can fail and try and improve. And that way you accelerate that process of learning through experiences. And that's the way I see coaching, not as you're teaching lessons that they're going to take away and do. Because I think at the times where I've done that, that's unsustainable. You know, you can get an event win out of that. You can get a good little peak here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But if your teaching is what they need to be able to do well, then the moment that information has filtered out and it's 2-3 weeks on and they've forgotten what you said, that's not going to work anymore. So you've almost got to accelerate that self-learning journey because that's where it's going to stick long term.
Yep.
So yeah, that I think accelerating learning versus teaching lessons is the way you got to see coaching, and it's a very subtle difference, and it's even hard to do when you're in the moment of teaching because it's very easy for us to be like, you should be doing this, rather than sort of going like, what should we be doing here, and then getting them to find that solution themselves. And that's the hardest part of being a coach, and one that I think many of the coaches who are coming into Rocket League, who have been in Rocket League for a bit now, it might even be worth, if you're listening to this now, just taking a step back and reflecting on the way they teach and coach, and going, am I teaching or am I letting them grow? And that's where you've got to accept that with the letting them grow approach, 2 years down the line, they'll be a better person, they'll be a better player, they'll be more successful in whatever they do. But in that short term, you might not get as quick a results. And so I think that's where you've got to accept that things don't happen straight away. And that's where I do get worried about teams like Queso who've just had this sudden rise in performance. You know, how sustainable is that for those guys? Will they carry on improving in that way? Or is this going to be a flash in the pan for them because they've just had this like breakthrough moment, and then suddenly when that's gone, does that drop them back down? So yeah, I think that makes sense, right?
100%. Yeah, for sure. Sort of planting the seeds in a way, sort of sense.
Yeah.
Love that. And I guess sort of on the back end of that case, so a bit you just mentioned there, sort of something sort of sprung to mind is a very interesting thing. That sort of whole idea of expectations. We're always going to have them, right? And every team's going to have them, especially if you go and come second in your first international LAN, right? You're going to have an expectation, I guess, you know, in Landon potentially, that, hey, you know, I've done this before, let's do it again. So where do you draw the fine line between expectations? Because I guess what I usually do is we sort of go through the ideal of, you know, of course there's always going to be an expectation, but, you know, let's just put in a perspective that there isn't. And if you can sort of take away that expectation and you can sort of feel a little bit more humble in the moment, you can sort of enjoy yourself a little bit better, knowing that, oh, if I stuff up now, my whole career's over. Well, it's not. But you sort of have to frame it in a different perspective. Was that something you ever had to do with the previous guys you coached?
Yeah, it's tough because it's again a very personal thing, right?
Yeah.
Some people,
Yeah.
well, I work with what was that? There was, I think they were actually called Mindflick, which is funny because of how close it is to
Oh,
your
okay.
podcast name. But, a performance psychology group who worked a lot with GB athletes and stuff. I worked with them for a little bit, learned a lot of their methodology. They had a profiling tool called Spotlight, which
Right.
was amazing, very unique compared to a lot of other profiling tools. It didn't label you; it sort of showed you where your preferences lie and then where you can shift with them.
Mm.
And one of the scales in that was around: do you play for reward or to avoid threat? So, are you playing so that you don't lose, or are you playing to get the reward of whatever the performance is? And
Right.
so that they use the example of a cat, like a cat and a mouse. So is the mouse avoiding the cat or chasing the cheese, right? Like
Gotcha.
what's the thing that motivates them, and how do they react off the back of that? And I think that will really dictate for a lot of individuals what keeps them going. And for some people, they don't even really care about them. I'm trying to think of a Rocket League player where that comes to mind, but they just rock up, play their best, and then go home.
Mm.
And like some people, they don't even think about that whole fluctuation and journey. And some people learn to try and dissociate from the reward and the threat of a performance.
Yeah.
And for those guys, you know, it's very hard to keep them motivated because it's like, why are you playing? Like, what is the reason you turn up every day to play? Like, what motivates you? Is it to stay relevant, or is it to win a tournament? Like, what keeps you going? And I think if you can balance all of the different angles into one healthy middle ground with a potential slight preference, whether it be to try and win or to avoid losing or to just keep on going, then that's going to be the healthy middle ground. The moment you let it overrun into one area too much, that's where, like we said before, if you concede a goal, that's going to hit you a lot harder. If you're an avoiding threat person and you concede a goal, you've not avoided the threat that you're trying to avoid. If you're avoiding threat person, you lose a game, boom, you're getting hit with these stimulations around a mindset that you're really conscious of. And then if you're trying to chase the reward and like you're not getting that goal, you're not getting that win, like it builds up tension and you start being like, I can't get to that cheese that I want.
Yeah.
And so that's where all of these different mindsets, you have to balance them out and you have to understand them, understand what happens when things go wrong and how to deal with that. And it's always going to be so personal to each individual because we've all created a preference through our upbringings of how our brains work in a competitive situation. And for the queso guys, I mean, cheese, it's a perfect example. For the queso guys, they're gonna experience a loss at some point.
Yep.
And they're going to get hit with a load of emotions and they're going to have to understand those emotions, and that's going to be where they have to learn a whole new set of experiences, because they will have sustained losses before but never sustained losses after being the best team in the world.
Yep.
And that's a whole different arc of reaching the top, having those expectations set of I need to win, otherwise it's a failure, and then taking that loss afterwards is really tough.
Yeah. The bounce back, hey? How hard can they bounce back once they get to that position? You know, we've seen that. I've seen that in a lot of League of Legends teams actually, whereby they've had them. You know, they've been best in the world, and then all of a sudden one loss, and literally the plate literally just crumbles underneath, because all of a sudden they can't understand why, and they can't sort of facilitate that environment, which was so positive. Now all of a sudden it's completely switched, and that's when teams often disband. And where we see, you know, a team's, you know, sort of split or part ways or make roster changes sometimes, because of factors like that. So it definitely is one of those situations whereby, you know, the high pressure and the stress can get to someone, and just completely not allow them to perform. So it's a crazy thing, and I guess that's why we see the importance, I guess, indirectly of, I guess, coaches and all these people who can help facilitate a team, like obviously sports psychologists. Now, obviously, with those teams, you know, some orgs have them, some orgs don't. Do you think that it's inevitable that maybe down the line orgs that don't go the route of, helping players externally may start to rethink that because of other teams finding a lot of success?
Yeah, I think the journey with every esport and every team is going to be, oh, this team's doing this, we should also do this, which is why performance psychology is so prevalent in esports, is because the early teams like Astralis that did it had success, and everyone was like, right, we've got to copy
We got to
this.
cover that.
We know it works now. And so that's why we see a lot of that in esports in general. But then we're looking with coaches now in Rocket League, and I think I'll just put it bluntly, I think there's a lot of people coaching in Rocket League who are probably having a bigger negative effect than they are positive effect, because a coach will affect a team in some way. If they're not affecting the team, then they're affecting the team by not affecting the team, because the team will be like, why is my coach not doing anything, right?
Yep.
So that will have an effect on the team. Whether it's positive or negative depends on the coach. And that's where I think we see some teams staying clear of coaches like your Dignitases, because they're waiting for that correct coach, the right person who's going to have a positive effect. And I think that's why, especially teams that are doing well, why they might stay clear of a coach, and because they're like, well, it's working right now, we don't want to ruin this while it's working. So I completely get that mindset. In terms of like what I said before about less is more, I think a lot of teams, even if they don't have a coach, they have someone who's there for them, whether that be the sub, whether that be the manager, whether that be, I mean, for some smaller orgs, it might even just be like the CEO of the org who comes in and just unpacks conversations for them. I think that's the key, is you've got to have that outside person who can help a team of individuals unpack and process the things that they're feeling, the things that they're trying to work out as a team. Because at the end of the day, the players have the answers. Like we said before, the coaches are just there to guide them in the right direction, get them to bring it out. And so you don't necessarily need a coach in what a lot of people think traditionally you'd need, of a replay analysis. This is how you play better Rocket League, because you're an example of one of those who doesn't do that. That was a big part of what I did outside of my coaching role in game, was to do all that unpacking of information. And so, yeah, I think we will see more and more. And honestly, I think we'll get to a stage in esports where we'll have teams of people working around the players. It already sort of happens in League of Legends. We'll have a performance psychologist, a nutritionist, a in-game coach, a manager. They'll all be a team of people working around those players to make sure they've got everything they need. Chefs are in esports.
The whole smorgasbord.
Like there will be everything. There'll be a whole entire team of people protecting these players from going backwards by giving them everything they could ever need, and then making it as easy as possible for those players to go out there and just play the game that they need to play, and make it so they don't even think about all these other things. And yeah, that's the end goal, I think, for every team. But at the moment, it's just not worth having that many people on the payroll to support a team, and that's why we have this one role fits all kind of person, which gets called a coach, gets called a manager, gets called I mean, I assume you go by coach, right? Like you're a coach, but with the asterisks of I don't say anything about Rocket League.
I always get flamed by CJ if I start bringing up like rotations and stuff like that. He's like, oh, what do you know, sort of thing. But I try, I've definitely, it's interesting because obviously my previous experience wasn't in Rocket League, but just by sitting in scrims every night and sort of you develop that knowledge, and I've sort of been able to sort of understand, different rotations, specific things that are a lot more specific now. And I feel quite confident in being able to sort of pick them things out and sort of pick out what's not working and what's working, sort of things. But as you said, it's very important to have that sort of element where it's the players know what's best. And I definitely know that my guys know what's best. It's just helping to facilitate that right solution and sort of bring that above ground sort of area. So I definitely see the importance of that for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is facilitate open discussion, whether it be questions or whatever it is. And I'm sure they won't mind me saying it, I think one of the best moments we had as a team at Guild, and it was a few weeks before the regional that we won was Tho was not happy after a scrim. There was something we were doing wrong and he wasn't happy. And I knew what was wrong, but I didn't want to be like, this is what's going wrong as a team. You're not doing this, this, and this. Because like we said before, if you say that to them, it's not going to last. So I remember saying, so what do you think we need to improve on? And I think he said rotations. And I went, okay, let's work with this. What about rotations? He was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I was like, okay, right. Let's just keep asking questions. I think I asked about 7 or 8 questions in a row, and we eventually got to him bursting with this. I think he almost like had this eureka moment of like, this is what I mean. This is how I feel. And then as a team, we just discussed it. We looked at some replays there and then. We went through the whole process, and it was like, that's something that anyone could do, is ask those questions. I guess the challenge for a lot of coaches, if you don't have the knowledge, you don't know your players well, you've not got that coaching mindset, is you might have stopped at rotations and just moved on. But knowing when to keep prying, knowing when to say, hey, do you want a one-to-one, knowing when to go, right, guys, make sure you put the work in, knowing how to keep bringing out the best in individuals, is something that you're always going to be learning and improving as a coach. And that's why you see the best coaches are the ones who focus on way more than just their role in the team. And so that's why I think when people hear these stories of, oh, this coach is just a cheerleader, this coach is just a tactical in-game person, it's like everyone is everything. They just have their preferences in different parts of their role. And I think that will always be the case for a coach in Rocket League, because it is such a holistic coaching style compared to more like tactical coaches that you see in League of Legends or Valorant, where they have to form strategies for the team and actually direct them in game. Yeah, I would always be interested to have a day in the life of a coach in another team and see what they do, because there's so many unspoken about things that everyone's doing. And I think the way we look at it, like you and I come from a more scientific background, so we're going to be looking at the human elements a lot more than maybe someone else who doesn't really think about science, and they're just like, come on guys, let's just go and have some fun. And they think of it from more of a social and mental health point of view of like, what would I want if I was in their shoes in terms of feeling good. And that's where maybe we could improve, because we look at it too much of a science than actually just human elements of emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how many sort of angles you can take towards coaching, because as you said, there are many hats that fit all, and you can be constantly changing those hats. You can change hats 10 times a day, if need be. And it's sort of crazy in that element, and especially for Rocket League. And I've said this a few times. I think I had a chat with Jack about it. The fact of Rocket League has 3 players on a team, whereas a lot of other esports have 5. And that's a big difference, because you're all of a sudden facilitating 2 extra players. You might not get as in depth with those extra people. So I think that's why in Rocket League, the bond and rapport that you build with your players is a lot more stronger, because all of a sudden you've only got 3. You can invest a lot more time sort of split between 3 rather than 5, right? So it's a lot more, I feel like more of like a family almost sort of thing, but sort of having different directions and knowing when to take different positions and stances in situations is the most crucial thing. And as you said, we're always going to be developing, we're always going to be learning what's right, what's wrong, and it's just, developing.
Yeah, constantly developing.
For sure. Now, before we start to wrap up, there's a few different sort of viewer questions and a sort of kind of a Rocket League specific things that that was asked previously, and I thought I'd bring up and have a chat with you about as well. Now, there's this whole idea, and it's prevalent in all games, and it's this whole idea of, I guess, ranked anxiety. That inability, whether it be a casual player, obviously I'd imagine it wouldn't happen too much more at the professional level. I'd imagine more so, just below professional, trying to even get into professional, whereby you are a high rank and, you see your rating, you see your MMR, I'm almost there, but, I'm scared to play. What if I lose? What if I have an off game? Do you have any, I guess, advice on overcoming that anxiety and just full sending maybe?
Yeah, it's always going to be, again, person to person. For me, I'm a very logical thinker. So if I ever had that thought around ranked anxiety, which I do sometimes, especially when, when I hit SSL for a season and I'm like, right, I've hit it now. I've got to get my rewards. I've got to be in the right frame of mind. I've got to warm up properly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think if you really care about your rank, try and work out where that caring is coming from and unpacking where is this ranked anxiety coming from. And for some people, it would be the fear of losing, right? I don't want to lower my rank because I hold myself so accountable to be at this rank. I want to make sure when someone asks me what rank am I in game, I can say this specific rank and then I'll feel better about myself. If that's the case, then maybe reevaluate your relationship with how you identify yourself, because you know, like if someone says to you like, oh, how much do you weigh, you know, of course it's gonna feel rubbish if you're a bit overweight.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you have to go through that journey to be able to get to where you want to do. And if you really care about getting a higher rank, focus less on the rank and focus more on what can I do to be better at the game? What can I do to warm up better? And look at just facilitating the strongest environment for you to play your best, and then going in and playing. And maybe that will have a negative effect. I don't know. This will be different person to person. Maybe that will mean that you then can't just jump into a game of ranked ever, because you'll always have to warm up for like an hour before you do it. And then maybe that'll turn to 2 hours, then 3 hours, and then it ends up getting so much warm up that you never actually play ranked.
The game. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, what is your relationship with ranked? Why do you feel that you cannot play because you're worried about losing your rank and going down? And if it is to do with the identifying with that rank, maybe focus on your performance factors rather than the title, right? Like I want to be known as a good player, not as a plat player, or I want to be known as my friend who I always want to play with, because whenever I play with them, they're amazing, rather than my friend who is grand champ. Because you very quickly get called out if you get to a peak and then are scared to lose it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, whatever your highest rank you achieve in any video game, that is not your average rank. That is always going to be an outlier, because you're always going to have had a lower rank at some point.
Yeah.
And so that's just going to be your highest point. Like I hit SSL every season, but I'm not an SSL player. I'm a GC3 player, you know? But I always find a way to get into SSL, sneak in, and then I probably drop out shortly afterwards. And that's fine, because I'm not good enough to stay in SSL for that long. And so that's the like you like if I asked you right now what rank are you in a game, what would you tell me?
Well,
what rank are you in Rocket League?
So I love this, and I adopted what I call the full send mentality. So I am currently champ 2, right? And I'm rocking a regional championship title, and I get absolutely flamed for it. But it doesn't matter.
I go incognito because I get flamed for it as well.
But it doesn't matter. And I've always had that sort of mentality whereby, you know, you can go into a game, and I love that the fact of you said the outlier being SSL, because you're not always going to be there. That's fantastic. But what I've always done, and the way I did it with StarCraft, because StarCraft is a very, very, very strong ranked anxiety game, because over there, you know, every one MMR matters drastically. And even if you go back, even if you shift back a bit, well, that's okay. It doesn't matter. But the way I've always looked and addressed ranked anxiety is, instead of looking at it as a whole, let's break it down a little bit more, okay? Is there one specific goal that I want to work on this game? Whether it be in this specific game, I want to work on getting a really good touch. I want to work on my boost management. And then even if you lose the game, did you work on that specific goal? Yeah, you did. Okay, that was a good game then. That was something that you learned that's going to inadvertently help you down the line. So sort of breaking ranked anxiety into a few different individual goals that are more prevalent towards the ultimate goal is the way that I've tackled ranked anxiety that's worked in the past. But again, as we've said the whole time, it's very individualistic. So it's always going to be important to find what works for you and the way that happens. And one of the other big ways and sort of problems that a lot of players run into is this whole idea of toxicity. Like you've probably got it, and I've got it. The water save spam and the the spam that absolutely happens and the roastings, and some of that stuff's inevitable, right? It's going to happen. And if you can sort of go into a game thinking, oh, it's going to happen, okay, no worries. You know, do you have an action plan in place? Whether it be muting chat, whether it be just laughing it off. There's a very, and it's not normal, but I had a chat with a Challenger League of Legends player quite a while ago, and he used to have off games, and like we all do. And he used to get really, really flamed, like a lot of the time. You know, he's well known, he's Challenger. What are you doing? Why are you making these mistakes? And this is like abusive toxicity sort of stuff. And what he would do is he'd close his eyes, whether it be in buy or between games, and he would imagine the person behind the monitor in the worst possible environment. Like their life outside of the game is the worst. And that would sort of help him to sort of break it down like, okay, it's all right. It's just a game. As soon as we take the headset off, I can do whatever I want to do. I can go for a walk. I can go and lie on my bed. I can do so many different things. It's just a game. And sort of putting in that perspective whereby if someone's really toxic or if someone's having a go at you, you can sort of imagine their position, and again, it's probably not the best sort of thing, but, just imagine, different positions can sort of help you potentially.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that recently with, when I see a comment from someone on social media, I always just try and think like, oh, I'm so sorry that you feel the need to actually say this. Your life must be so terrible that you feel the need to be toxic to someone online who you don't even know.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you can definitely, especially with toxicity, that can be a good way to deal with it. But yeah, I think the biggest lesson which you mentioned was around why are you anxious about your rank? And I can almost guarantee if someone believed, let's just use Rocket League for example, if someone believed they were at GC2 level and they were in GC1, right? I should imagine they'd jump on a lot easier than if they felt they're at GC2 level but they got to GC3. And that's really where the ranked anxiety comes from of like not feeling confident that you can go into that next game and win it based off of whatever the factor is. And so that's where you've got to focus on, well, what can I actually control to make sure I go up in ranked in the future? And that is your own ability and performance.
For sure.
So that's where turning that ranked experience or your experience in the game into self-development. And I think it can be quite healthy, the ranked anxiety mindset at times, when people go, I don't want to play ranked, so I'm just going to do some free play for a bit. And that can be quite a healthy way of utilizing ranked anxiety to get you putting some grind in and mechanics, practicing to be better and so on. It's when you don't even want to jump on the game, don't even want to play it, that's when it can get quite unhealthy, because the only way to get better, the only way to rank up is to play. For me, sometimes I will just go, I don't feel good today. I'll play one game, I'll lose. I don't feel good today. I'm just going to do free play for 2 hours. And I've spoken to some other people and they're like, you're crazy. Why would you sit and do practice for 2 hours? And I'm like, well, I want to enjoy my experience of the game. And the way I enjoy playing Rocket League is being better. And so if the only way I'm going to feel better is to put in those 2 hours, by the end of that free play session, I'm scoring like 6 goals in free play and I'm feeling great. And, I've got like a podcast on the background, a little bit of Mindclickers in the background. I'm just grinding away at Rocket League and I'll feel great. And I think that's it. You're playing the game to get better, to enjoy the game. And if ranked isn't enjoyable for you because you don't feel good at the game, reevaluate, why don't you feel good at the game? Do you need to go away and practice? Do you need to take a break? Do you need to play ranked with a friend? Do you need to play ranked solo queue rather than with a friend? And then try and bring that enjoyment back and bring that self-development element back. And with those two things together, you'll sit down, you'll play an hour of Rocket League and you'll come away more fulfilled than you did beforehand.
100%. I love that. There's so many different areas and ways you can attack practice and ranked anxiety and stress. And it's, as you said, very individualized. And, once you sort of find your groove and sort of get into the habit of that, I feel like it sort of just clicks almost. It's like, okay, I've got my way of doing it. This is how I'm going to do it from now on. It works for me. It might not work for someone else, and I'm just going to stick with it. And that's perfectly okay. Love that. And I guess one other final sort of element people sort of think, and I guess it's sort of related to rank anxiety, sort of not, but it's this whole idea of having a perfectionism attitude, whereby, take example, the free play example, you're going to free play and, you're hitting triple flip resets, you're hitting the most craziest shots, and then you sort of have that mindset, okay, I can hit that. Why aren't I hitting it? Why aren't I hitting flip resets in game? Why aren't I doing this? I know I can do it. And then it's sort of an external stress that you place upon yourself because all of a sudden you're trying to do something so intensely, but all of a sudden you can't. And it's sort of that overthinking area in combination with the stress of knowing that you can do it. Have you ever had that sort of experience or come into sort of contact with that?
Yeah, I think that can relate to all sorts of factors in the game. It can even relate to just with Rocket League, because it's short enough with the game, like it's a 5-minute game. You can literally just have one game affect the next game and the game after that. In a game like Valorant, you'd potentially have the round, or CSGO, where you have a bad round.
Yep.
And then the next round's even worse, and the round after that's even worse. You got to treat it like, I'm a very logical thinker again. So the way I look at it as kind of similar to that of probability. And, you want to make sure every time you flip that coin, it's 50-50, that you don't let the previous bad result make the next result feel worse, because you don't want to start chaining negative thoughts. And so that's where, like, with missing a shot, can be very easy to miss a shot, and then every single time you go for a shot, you're then thinking, oh, I better not miss it like last time.
Yeah.
And so having a way to reset and move on, you got to find your own way. So for me, one of the big things that I do is I take a sip of water, because I'm a big believer in hydration. It's then makes me go, am I actually just thirsty? Did I miss that shot because I'm actually just thirsty? And then I'll take a sip and I'll be like, yeah, I was a little bit thirsty actually. Put the water down. I'll be like, well, that means that hydration is no longer a factor that could be affecting my performance.
Yeah.
I had it the other day in my rank session. I genuinely hadn't drank water for like an hour because I was having such a good session. I went to sip it. I was like, my bottle's been empty for an hour. I haven't drunk water for like an hour.
Yeah.
I was like, my next game could be the game where I'm a shriveled mess because I've not drunk any water.
Yeah.
And so I went away, got some more water. I came back and I played so much better the next game just because I felt better having some water. So for me, water's a good one. Some people, it will be, I don't know, like self-talk, right? You can have a little self-talk of like, oh, don't worry, it's all good. It is what it is. Is a classic mindset to have. It is what it is. You can't control it now. It's happened.
Yeah.
So working out your own personal solution, and again, it's practice. Find all sorts of different things you can do. Find your own personal solution that allows you to turn the next event into an isolated event and not be affected by the previous one. And you will find, just in life, you'll be able to move on from negative emotions a lot quicker. We're all human. It's very easy to let that then be a perfect solution that then doesn't work. Sometimes I miss a shot and I go, oh, it is what it is. And I go on and miss another shot. I'm like, oh God, right. Today is one of those days, and you just can't get over that emotion in your head.
Yeah.
But trying to find a reset method. Do you have any reset methods? Like, do you have one that you fall back on?
What I usually do is a little bit of breathing sometimes. Ages ago, because I used to do Taekwondo quite competitively. And back then I used to have sort of a breathing method that I would do, whereby you put the tongue at the top of your mouth and you breathe through that way. And that really used to help me calm down. Like when I wasn't, during a fight or something, obviously I wasn't doing that. So in the decreased period when I was sort of just on the side, I could do my nice little breathing method, and that would help me. Another method I use is just acknowledging the present. Like I'm here right now. Is the previous game, is that affecting me right now? Well, no, I'm just sitting here. I'm on my computer. I'm looking at my screen. Nothing's happening right now, this instant second, and sort of just helping that sort of grounding almost, whereby this is the reality, this is the present. What I'm doing now, it's going to impact the future. It can impact what happens next, but what's gone, that's already happened. So let's just forget about that, and let's sort of move on. There's a whole bunch of different methods that you can use and utilize. One sort of funny one that I can sort of reflect on, whereby when I used to coach rugby and used to do a bit of rugby work, one of the guys used to have a favorite t-shirt that he used to wear, and then he eventually swapped that out for sunlight. So before a game, he'd love to just go out and take 10 minutes in the sun. So if it was, having a bit of a bad day, he'd go and get a little bit of sun work, and he'd feel a lot better. But then what happened when it was a night game? He didn't get the sunlight. So that completely ruined him. So I guess that's sort of a lesson in sort of having something that's in your control is the most important thing. Because obviously there's things that are out of your control that you can't control when you need it the most. So I think that would be my advice, just finding something that you can control, that's readily accessible as well, especially, for our players who are, if we're going international, if we're on a plane, all these sort of different circumstances, unusual, environments we're in, we need that little bit of, hey, just take a step back, just take a bit of a sidestep and just have 2 minutes to myself. And if you can do something that's, sort of known to yourself, like having a drink of water, that's pretty easy to do, or just having a bit of groundwork or a bit of breathing, it can go a long way. So I think it's important.
Yeah, it is what it is mindset is something that I've really encompassed in my life. I
Mm,
don't know how long now, but
yeah.
I've almost got it to a stage where I'm obnoxious to my friends with how much I move on from things that are
Yeah.
quite bad. So like just to give an example, so last
Mm-hmm.
night I was out with some friends
Yeah.
and we put our coats by the side. Um I had some stuff in the pocket of my coat that I went, I don't want to leave that in my coat here. So I put it in my own pockets,
Mm-hmm.
left my coat on the side. So I'd already in my head assumed that my coat could get stolen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of helped me a little bit, planning for the worst. That's how my brain works. I think of all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah.
But two of my friends' coats got stolen, and
Right.
they were very sad. They were very frustrated, as you would be, right? Um, Luckily, I could give my coat to one of them, so they stayed warm on the walk back and so on. But they were like, "I can't believe someone stole my coat," and I literally just went, "It's happened now. They've stolen your coat. We don't know why they did it.
Mm.
It could have been an accident. It could have been so cold, whatever it is. But what we can take away from this is that it's happened, and that we're in a fortunate enough position that you can just go and buy another coat, and life will carry on. And
True.
in so much time, it won't affect you. And we're so lucky that we're in a position where this doesn't affect our life, but it could affect our life. For some people, that could be money that they just cannot afford to go and spend on another coat.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when I was saying that to them, I could almost tell they were looking at me and being like, "You're right, but I hate it." Like I hate that you've taken yourself out of this moment and been able to look at it like that. And the same thing happens, like in cricket. Whenever I get out, I just walk off and I'm like, the stumps have been hit now. I can't change that. I made
Yeah.
a stupid mistake. I'm out now. But some people come back and they chuck things about, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, if you get that emotion over things, it can be quite detrimental to the way you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is, of course, for some people, that heightened state of caring is important for their performance. And at my gym, I get told off because when I mess up lifts or I miss a lift, I'm very negative towards myself.
Mm.
Which, of course, it goes against everything I just said. If I drop a lift, I should just go, it is what it is. But short term, it can be healthy to have that mindset,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're able to get over it. Because in that lifting environment for me, the reason why I'm negative is because the way I get myself amped up and built up to be able to lift that weight is to have an ego and believe I am the strongest man in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's almost like an extra percentage that I convince myself that I'm stronger than I am, so that I
Yeah.
get the lift. So when I don't get the lift, my whole like planned psychology around being super strong has just been thwarted by me dropping the weight, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like everything comes crashing down at
Crashing
once, and
down.
it's like a slap in the face.
Mm-hmm.
But then the moment that moment has passed, I go, well, it is what it is. I'll go away and get stronger. Next time I'll get the lift.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something to practice. Like you cannot expect anyone to just go out there and it is what it is, everything, and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if something means a lot more, like in that coat example, if someone had just stolen an expensive watch, of course it's gonna be a lot worse. It's gonna mean a lot more. And if you haven't got the same ability to bounce back from something, like if you lose a tournament match and you know that if you lose it, you're probably going to get dropped. Of course, you're going to be more emotional. And so,
Mm-hmm.
trying to embrace it as often as possible and understand that things will get better, that you can go away and control things. Like you said, what's in your control? What's happened in the past is not in your control. So what can you do now to go on to the next moment that can make you be better if you come across this challenge again? And it can it can be quite an unhealthy mindset to do it for everything. You do need a little bit of emotional release after negative things.
Yeah.
But especially in gaming environments, you don't have enough time to be able to release those emotions, process them, walk away from the moment and come back. A lot of time you're in the middle of a game, so therefore you have to be able to move on quickly and deal with it later on, like retroactively come back and go, how did I feel at that moment? Why did I feel that way? What was the
Mm-hmm.
reason for that moment? And that's where a coach is great for that, right? Because they're the ones who are noting these things down and going, let's revisit that later on.
Yeah. For sure. Wow, I think that was an absolute sort of phenomenal summary that you put there, Mike. It was really good, and I love the way that you put it because it's so relatable. It's so relatable for I guess so many people. It's just one of those things whereby everyone, and no matter how big or small, is gonna go through a moment whereby things haven't gone their way. I don't think there's a single person who has everything their way. And something's going to go wrong eventually. And then in that situation, you have to make a decision. And I learned a long time ago that your reaction to things can have a big, massive impact on the smallest things. If you react to getting served the wrong meal at a restaurant, how are you going to react to that? You're going to be over the top about it. You're just going to, sorry, I ordered something different. If you go over the top about it, is there someone who's close to you who might think, why did you do that? Or different reactions and actions each. Actually, there's something about that, about the equal opposite reaction sort of stuff. But one of those big things is just having a reaction and being able to control that. And I think that learns sort of perfect with your sort of mindset and methodology around that. So I really love that. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you got to remember, you are still human. So
For sure.
reacting negatively to things is fine. It is normal. It's about trying to control it as much as possible. It's like turning those every time this happens reactions into, maybe I don't need to do it every time, and then saving those emotional reactions for when it genuinely does sting and genuinely does hurt. And then also, like we said, being able to unpackage that in a healthy way is a skill in its own right. Sustaining a loss is awful, and sustaining a big negative moment is awful. But if you do that with everything, you're just going to constantly be reacting negatively to things, like spilling a drink. Like, if you spill a drink, it happens, Go work it out, get some things to clean it up. Don't turn that into a massive negative moment on your day, because it's just going to affect the next thing that happens, and then the thing after that, and then the thing after that, and then that's where you're turning small little issues into bigger issues, and then that's when they build up and become a problem.
Love that. Awesome. Phenomenal. I think it's almost time to start to what I like to call on Mindclickers the unwind. So we turn off the gas and we roll down the hill slowly. I noticed Shaw's in the chat just said, get Gregan on how to control nerves. So nerves is sort of in line with all of that ranked anxiety, but I guess nerves can always be, before a tournament or anything like that. And I guess, some of those exact same principles we had to talk about, and being able to, I guess, control yourself before a tournament, and, those sort of individualized techniques that you can use, whether it be a bit of breathing, whether it be having a drink of water, and sort of just realizing, okay, I'm in the moment. And then sort of embracing for what's next. And sort of just dealing through that. And I think there's so many different things and angles you can take with controlling nerves, it's pretty important to sort of just have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, nerves is something people always bring up, and like you said, it's very individualized. I think the big thing people don't realize is nerves will always be there. You just learn how to understand them and deal with them. And nerves tend to be related to uncertainty, and when you're, especially in tournaments, you're going into a tournament nervous because you want to win but you might lose. And I think the best way to deal with it is experience. The more experienced you are, the less nervous you will feel, because it's not an abnormal experience. The uncertainties that you're worried about, you've experienced them all before. If you've been in a tournament setting 15 times, you go into the 16th one, it's not going to feel as new as if you went into the first one. And so a lot of the time you have to accept that the nerves are going to be there, and that this is just part of your journey and you're experiencing it. First time you play in front of a bigger crowd, first time you play in front of more people, first time you play on land, whatever it is, you're going to feel those nerves. And when I did public speaking quite a lot, my strategy around dealing with nerves was make sure you're the expert in the room, because there is nothing more scary than doing a talk about something where someone in the room knows more than you. And so you got to make sure you work in that way. And then you also look at performance. Just do everything that's in your control to make sure you perform your best. And then all you can do after that is learn from it and go on and do better. And you cannot fast track getting better at things. So therefore you have to go through those experiences of being nervous, going into a tournament, losing, getting better, going further in a tournament, losing, getting better, and so on. And just remember that everyone feels nerves. No matter how confident people look, they will feel nervous. And sometimes just accepting it. I think one of the things people do is they try and hide it.
Yep.
They'll try and be like, yeah, I'm not nervous. I'm fine with it. And then when they feel nervous, they're like, oh God, I feel nervous now. Whereas if instead just sort of say to yourself, I feel those nerves, it's because I care. I'm just going to try and do some breathing now. There's techniques around breathing to recenter. There's techniques around releasing energy to be able to, nerves can often build up a lot of pent up energy for people. So that's where stretching or, getting up and doing a little bit of exercise before you sit down,
Yep.
or trying to lower your heart rate by breathing. If you get sweaty hands, dealing with that as well. So like all of those factors, you can try and help control them. And then once you get into the game, what most people find is the nerves are way worse in the build up and the anticipation of something happening. And then when you're actually in the moment, it can be a lot better. And I guess that's sort of like lots of different angles. But yeah, you just got to practice it. It's literally a skill like anything. You've got to go out there. You've got to experience it 100 times over before you know how to deal with it better on the 101st.
Awesome, love that. Oh, I might have to quote that for when we do the sort of media for it. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, awesome. I mean, I guess I as I said before, rolling down the end of the hill. I guess as a bit of a final note, and I sort of do this at the end. I did it with Jack, Joe, all the other guys as well. Sort of, I definitely know there are listening. Potentially a lot of people who are aspiring to become a pro player. And are sort of thinking, how do I do that? How do I get into esports and what direction should I take? I don't know where to start. For some of those guys who are looking to, potentially get into esports and all that sort of stuff, what advice would you give those guys?
I think similar to what we just said with nerves, of just go out there and experience it. Enter tournaments. Don't worry about prize money. Don't worry about your team and like building a team that's going to last forever. Just go out there, play with some friends, and then maybe make some friends who are a bit better. Just try it, and off the back of that, you'll learn way more than you ever would planning. And off the back of the experiences, you'll then know, do I need to work on this? Do I need to find new teammates? Do I need to maybe enter some higher level tournaments or try some low level tournaments to experience a longer day? Until you go out there and do it, a lot of times you're never gonna know what you need to do to get better. And also just enjoy the journey. I think it's similar to what you always hear from YouTubers and streamers. They're always like, oh, if you're going into it to try and make this your job, then you're not going to do well in it. You need to go into it with the mindset of you enjoy the process, you enjoy the hobby, and then the rewards will come later potentially. And if they don't come, like, it's the same as a professional athlete. Not many people make it. Very few people make it, in fact. And so just experiencing competing in esports is key. So if you're at school, perhaps get a little school team together. If you're at university, get involved in gaming societies. If you're not at either of those, or those groups don't have potential to play with, find a local community and get some friends together. Even like I found my first team in ranked. I played with someone in ranked who was like, hey, do you want to team up and do a tournament? Just go out there, experience the journey, and you'll get there eventually. And lastly, I was going to mention that the people you see at the top who've won big tournaments, they're the people who've probably lost the most, because you have to lose to learn and improve and go further. So if you're looking at them and thinking, I want to win like them, you have to go through that hundreds of losses streak before you get to a stage where you win, because there's only ever one winner in a tournament. And I can tell you now, it wasn't Monkey Moon for a long time. And then suddenly Monkey Moon comes out on top, and then he's winning, right? So he's gone through all of those times. He came last in RLRS in his first season of RLRS, Like, that's the journey you have to go through, is you have to lose a lot before you can go and win.
Oh, deep hitting. Love that. Awesome. What a way to finish up, and what a way to wrap up. I'm sure that a lot of guys listening will take so many of those tips on board, because they're real, right? They're real, they make sense. And, just being able to experience esports, it's all about the journey, and it's just all about the ride. So make sure you enjoy it, and enjoy it as more as I can say it. For everyone listening, for all those guys listening on the podcast and tuning into the YouTube video, I'll put it underneath as well. Where can we find you on all of your different socials?
I guess just go to twitter.com/Gregan, Gregan. and you'll find everything through there.
Mm-hmm.
I put stuff on YouTube, stream every now and again. If you want to see me lift heavy weights, go to my Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much everything. But no, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like this is the kind of conversation that I want to hear more of in esports as time goes on, because there are people out there thinking hard about it, and you're definitely one of those, which is instantly why I wanted to come on here when I first spoke to you. So keep doing the great work with Mindclickers, and anyone who's listening, make sure to follow the podcast and watch the next one, or listen to the next one.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it, Gregan. You're coming on. I felt like it was an absolutely phenomenal conversation, because there was a lot of similarities that we could relate to. Obviously being coaches, so I really felt that sort of passion and sort of energy as well. So yeah, I couldn't thank you so much more for coming on the podcast and joining me for a little over an hour and a half to have a bit of chat about some crucial topics that definitely mean the most. So again, thank you for coming on, and I'll see you next one.
Thank you.
Bye.